Okay, so about a year ago, the following video occurred.
It's the heart-stopping video of a defendant taking a flying leap and attacking a judge. Now, the defendant, Deborah Redden, has been sentenced in the case. Redden will serve at least 26 years in prison for the attack on Clark County District Judge Mary Kay Holtus. Earlier this year, the judge, without her robe on, told a jury what happened from her point of view on the bench.
The level of force he used the entire time was superhuman. I don't know. From the time he came through the air and smashed into me, he knocked me literally almost through the wall.
Okay. An attack on the king's guards is an attack on the king. So that happened a year ago. And I thought it was pretty funny when it first happened, to be honest with you. Just because, these judges in general have done injustice time and time again. The system is all but a kangaroo court at this point, and whatever, right? It was just something that we saw in the viral verse of the internet. So today, the guy actually was sentenced for this, and let's take a look at how this plays out.
I'm not a bad person. I'm not an evil person.
31-year-old Deborah Redden pleads for leniency before a judge sentences him for this. An attack on District Court Judge Mary Kay Holtus as she sentenced him in January on a charge of attempted battery. Redden running up and jumping over Holtus's bench.
I'm not making excuses for my actions. I'm saying I'm not a bad person. And I know that I did not intend to kill Mary Kay Holtus. I know I cared about her well-being.
Holtus and a courtroom marshal both injured in the attack, leading prosecutors to charge Redden with attempted murder. During trial in September, Redden agreed to plead guilty with the stipulation he's mentally ill.
I saw nothing but red, and I don't remember doing anything except for jumping on top of her and doing this to her robe. I was like, why are you doing this to me? That's what I wanted to ask her, if I think I know myself, but I'm not really sure.
He made a conscious decision to kill me and made every effort to succeed. If he had his way, he'd be facing a sentence of life without the possibility of parole for murder.
Prosecutors reading a statement from Holtus during Tuesday's sentencing, Redden crying as his attorney explained his client's years-long battle with schizophrenia.
This is a person that can and would be able to do it given the appropriate help from a psychologist and mental health counselor.
As she handed down her 26 to 65-year sentence, the judge in this case saying this attack was one on all judges.
It was not just retaliation for an attack on Judge Holtus. It was also an attack on the judiciary.
With credit for time served, Redden will be eligible for parole in the 2050s. He'd be in his mid-50s by then. I'm David Charnes, 8 News Now.
Days after the attack in January, Judge Holtus continued the hearing, sentencing Redden to several years in prison. Today's judge ordering this new sentence to start after that time on that case is fulfilled. The judge also today ordering Redden to pay more than $60,000 in restitution to the court employees who had to take time off from work after that attack.
So in my time period of doing this, right, or just hell, existing in this world, seeing how we're living, how things are playing out, you see a lot of different cases. You hear a lot of different things. Many of which the time doesn't always justify the crime. More often than not, you'll see a very merciful and compassionate approach to pedophilia, to child pedophilia, a lenience, somewhat of a compassion, a sympathy that courts tend to display. Most certainly a person will not get 26 years for child porn, child pedophilia, rape, um, a lot of charges, right? So 26 to 65 years for this particular act, I would definitely say is trumped up for sure. And obviously, they wanted to do that as a deterrent. So the general public, while many of us probably laughed at that incident up front, now look at it and might think twice about committing an act like that. Secondly, my guy is sitting here saying, I'm not a bad person. What are you hoping to accomplish by saying that? And he seemed genuine and sincere. I don't think they said you were a bad person. They charged you with attempted murder. Why? Whatever legal team, you obviously had a court appointed attorney to tell you to plead guilty to attempted murder under the condition that you were mentally ill. Apparently, that meant absolutely positively nothing. I can't see them giving you really any credit for being mentally ill. They just threw the book at you. And I'm not even sure you can read it, to be honest with you. That wasn't a good play. You know, you might have been better off just taking that to trial, hoping for a hung jury, because the charges were definitely trumped up. Aggravated assault, sure. Assault, first, second degree, something like that, maybe. But attempted murder, I don't know. Maybe you had something you were saying as you were pounding her. You know, she wasn't even hurt to the point, you know, where she needed an ambulance or anything like that. She was able to get up afterwards. So they definitely trumped him up. And then he pled guilty. Not a good play. That wasn't a good play at all. I'm quite sure you were looking at something even worse than that, but that just wasn't a good play. Anybody who knows anything about the American justice system, you had a few things working against you, my guy. One of them, you're a black guy. Fairly large, and you attacked this. She looked older, maybe in her early 50s, white woman. Handled her the business. You know, you didn't break anything or anything like that. I was expecting them to hand you something, but 26 years, yeesh. And, you know, sitting there crying, begging for mercy. Listen, let me tell anybody out there now who's expecting from justice from this system, especially if you're not a wealthy white person committing pedophilia, you can forget about it. The best you can hope for is to have a significant legal team put together that can hopefully give you some kind of an advantage. Depending on where you commit the crime, you may be able to catch a break with a jury and what the crime is. But other than that, you don't got a whole lot going for you. And even though it seemed like you were, you know, sincere in your whole, I'm dealing with mental illness, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt you were on meds, to be honest with you. But just piling down meds because the doctor told you, and you know you're living as a dysfunctional adult, you're just not very functional in life in general, whether you're on meds or not, is not going to excuse that. And now essentially you're looking at, because you forgot to take your medication for a day or two, whatever it was, 26 years in prison. In addition to the 7 that the first judge he assaulted gave him 7 for that, which I thought was a bit extra, but that seemed about right for that particular thing, right? 7 years for jumping over the bench and knocking the judge a few times. Seemed about right. Maybe get out in 5. But 26 plus the 7, that's 34, 32, something like that. 30 some years. 30 some years. I don't know, man. Hey, listen, I'm not all this, that, and the third is sacred and holy, and we have to protect the integrity of the system and blah, blah, this and that. I'm not really on that train. I get it. You do need some kind of a system in place, but systems need to be able to accept the realities of what they're dealing with. And we got a lot of broken people out here today. That's just the way it is. Does that excuse the conduct? No, you can't jump over a bitch, let alone she was a lady, right? Like, I mean, you know, I don't mind the idea of handing it to some imbecile who's hiding behind robes, right? But you shouldn't be pounding ladies like that, to be honest. But nonetheless, 30-something years for it, I do think is a little bit trumped up, you know. You can't expect a whole lot though, right? Like if I, you, me, we allow for ourselves to fall to the point where we need mercy from any judicial system, we're not in a good position. We're just not. And I'm not talking about like, oh, I was wrongly pulled over, I was wrongly arrested. You know, they violated my First Amendment, Second Amendment rights. They violated, you know, they can warrantless entry of my home or something like that. That's different. That's fair, and there's a whole lot that happens. That's primarily what we address here. And those injustices most certainly need to be weeded out and addressed. But when you find yourself in a situation like this, where this is a direct result of your action or inaction, that's a little bit different. You know, that's a little bit different. And you know, you can't allow for yourself to fall in situations like that. You just can't. I can't. It's not going to be to our favor. And I'll say this now: if anyone out there is struggling with emotional issues such as to that extent, and I know we can all have difficulties with anger. Some of us struggle a little bit more than others, but if you're dealing with something to that extent, you might want to get it taken a look at in some way, shape, fashion, or form before it leads you to that point. Or in even worse cases, some people, you know, they get homicidal behind that kind of stuff, you know. So I think it's tragic. I think 30 something years. What did she say? 26 plus he had 7, so 33. 33 years minimum is what he's looking at behind that particular act. I think that's excessive. He seemed like a guy who just was pretty much a deer in headlights, had a bad moment, and was expecting some kind of a consideration for that, and got nothing. Zero. And anyone who repeats, you can expect the same or worse, depending on your profile. You know. So although governments make mistakes, judicial bodies most certainly make mistakes, and they do need to be corrected. They do need to be held accountable. In some cases, there needs to be some kind of vigilante justice to an extent. I'm not sure that was the right time for that, as far as from that guy, and the way that whole thing went down. But now you're just another, you know, black guy who can't control his anger and has all kinds of problems, looking for mercy, sitting in a jail, right? How many jails are full of those? How many situations are out here on par with that? Young men, if you're out there listening, we got to be smarter than that. My advice: think twice, move once.